It could be that you're getting one low light plant, learn about it, learn how to take care of it, and then tend it like it's a cat or a dog. Think about it as a sentient being as opposed to as a static thing in the corner that I'm going to neglect and never water. The minute we shift our mind to loving a thing like it's a living thing, like it has feelings and like it has all of that, it will bring out in you another layer of connectivity to your nervous system. So it could just be one plant, as simple as one plant. And oftentimes what I see is the one plant turns into two, and the next thing it's five, and people then have plants all over their apartment, right? So, so it's possible. It's possible to do it in home.
Hey, Monique, welcome to the Awaken Heart podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me, Nancy. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. So, my listeners, we initially had this scheduled for a couple weeks ago. And what happened a couple weeks ago?
Well, I was getting ready to be on the podcast where we were having a wicked storm and it was raining like crazy and the power went out. And so I had to go onto my iPad and get onto Wi-Fi and try to find Nancy and be like, I can't do this.
She did. She found me. So and she actually came on. So I hadn't seen the email that you had sent. So I had popped on. I was sitting here and you're like, oh my gosh, did you get my email? Like, yeah, no problem. Like, no, go take care of yourself. And then we reschedule and here we are. So
here we are.
And you've survived the storm.
Yes.
So I'm really interested. I know we talked a little before we hit record in what you are bringing to people as far as their land and their landscapes and cultivating a space that you really, really love and enjoy because I do stuff also as well. As I mentioned, I do relocation and finding people the perfect home and how important it is to live in an environment that really resonates with you and supports you. And landscaping in the land is so important and to honor the land and have a space that really aligns with your energy. And I know that, like you said, a lot of landscapers will just like, oh, here's, something here and there. And it's a beautiful environment, but they're not even, like you said, stewards of the land, going in and cultivating and listening to the land and seeing what it needs to nurture your home and yourself by living in that environment. And with everything that's happening in the world as well, with how our soil is being depleted and how there's, even the fertilizing, it's poisoning our land and our environment around us. And you have a whole regenerative approach to it. So I'm really excited to have this conversation to see how people can improve their living environment and also improve themselves in the process because you offer coaching as well. So, I mean, that's a lot said, but if you, for my audiences, don't know you or can you give a little bit of an introduction of yourself and where you started? You said you've kind of done stuff for 40 years before this, and where you and what brought you to doing this kind of line of work?
Yeah, for sure. It is a long journey because it does span almost 40 years, right? So I think I'm finishing my 38th year or starting my 39th, somewhere around there. And but so I started in this industry by accident in my late teens. Just, got invited to go out and landscape one day, do spring cleanups. And I was dancing growing up and bodybuilding, and I really liked to be moving and active. And I was pretty lost as to what I was going to do with my life as high school was ending, and everybody was, they'd already taken all these exams and applied to college, and I was just like, I think I forgot to do all of that. And I was kind of lost, and I found this just sort of by dumb luck, and really just fell in love with how it grounded me, no pun intended, but it just grounded me. And I had a bit of a dysregulated nervous system. I couldn't have used those words back then. I didn't know that. I was a trauma survivor from childhood, so didn't understand how that made me like not really centered. But dancing made me centered, and bodybuilding made me centered, and then being outside centered me. And now there's all this research about how when you put your hands in good healthy soil, there are actually antidepressants and all sorts of living biota, in that soil that is symbiotic with the human nervous system. So clearly I was feeling all that. I didn't have any of the words. I didn't really know anything about the industry. I just kept putting one foot in front of the other. And as I got inspired or intrigued or excited about the next step, I just took it. I didn't really overthink it. And it wasn't until I did graduate college. I studied entrepreneurship at Northeastern University, landscaped my way through, and I and probably everybody else thought when I graduated I would get a real job, and I think I did too. I didn't know.
Mhm.
And I started doing all those things that postgrads do, and and finally one day I just woke up. I'm like, I have a real job. I'm an entrepreneur, for crying out loud. I can make this my, I was already freelancing. And so by the time I was by the time I was 21, I had a business, and I did that business for about 9 years. It was called Second Nature. I got married and was going to have my first child, and realized, wow, I really probably should turn this into a corporation. I have the know-how. Let's do that. And it became the Garden Continuum. And I've been growing it ever since. And it started as one kind of business, and it's a very, very different business now. I spent almost 10 years working on conservation, and then became an organic land care provider. And so all of those machinations of growth moved me from what I would call conventional landscaping, to what I now call regenerative landscaping, where the work we do is about helping to heal earth, horticulture, and all of that, but in conjunction with the well-being of human beings. So each human being is individual. Each slice of land has its individuality. You're reading both of those, and you're trying to see what are the synergies and how can you make that home space something that really invites the heart and nervous system of the person who lives there to regulate down, right? To calm, just by virtue of stepping on the land or actually even seeing it. That if you have a really hard day and you move into what I call the arrival experience, this is that moment where energetically you start to get close to your home space, then you see, then you park, then you get out, it's just that whole piece can literally regulate a nervous system if the landscape is done in such a way that is inviting to the human. We call this lifescaping. This my lifescape method, that's what I wrote a book about, is really how we do that, so that we are connecting the heart and the nervous system to the heart and the nervous system of the ecology that's at your home. And that's the quick version of the arc of how I got from raking leaves and mulching to regenerative landscape.
And you had talked about, didn't you start it? Yeah, you were a teenager when you started, and you touched the land and you felt how that could have a calming effect. And we're actually like batteries. The earth is like, we're batteries. We plug in, and that's why it's so important to ground, like stick your feet in, because literally within 20 minutes, 10, 20 minutes, or even instantly, you're healing your body and you're aligning your body, because we've gotten so disconnected because we're wearing, like, we used to wear leather soles, now we're in rubber soles, and we're so disconnected from the earth. And literally planting your hands in the earth can, like you said, have that calming effect. It's not just some imaginary woo-woo thing. There's actually, scientific. It's real.
It's real.
It's real. So there's that. And then what you were talking about as far as really understanding the energies of the land. And when you're coming back to your home, how does it feel? Because I know I feel that way if I'm in the city or somewhere in the suburbs or there's a lot of traffic in a lot of sidewalk or concrete. And as I'm driving home, as I start seeing more green and more greenscapes and flowers, and then there's trees, I literally feel my nervous system calming down, and I just feel so much better, and it soothes me a lot. So a lot of what you're talking about, how you cultivate the space and the land, it sounds a lot like feng shui. Is it kind of like feng shui where you're kind of understanding where the energies are coming from, the certain points, and hearing about a person's history, or they're doing their chart or whatnot? Is there some of that involved in it? Not necessarily feng shui, but
Yeah, so
something.
geomancy, feng shui,
Mhm,
that's all kind of tethered to the same thing. Uh, I don't practice that
mhm,
specific
mhm,
practice. I'm intuitive and I'm very connected to the
mhm,
land, partly I think it was so healing to me early on. But I was like that even in the beginning, where like the land always called me. My grandparents had a lot of land in the Allegheny Mountains in Maryland, and as a child and even growing up, even as a teenager, and in my 20s, when you don't want to be anywhere near your family and parents,
mhm,
I still wanted to go there. Like I loved that land. Always felt very connected to the ocean. So I think it's like all human beings have access to inner knowing, intuition. They have the ability to become aware, to come into their essence nature. But it takes time to cultivate that within yourself, and it takes that stillness. If I've
mhm,
learned anything, in practicing yoga and becoming a yoga instructor, is that, this finding that gap in the thinking, it's the similar tactical thing from going to a very urban, hard, unvibratory environment into one that is softer, actually living and breathing, actually vibrating, with life energy. That if you stop just for a moment, you will feel it. But the more closed down, rigid, guarded that you are to protect yourself, the harder it is to actually feel that thing in 20 seconds. You need maybe the 20 minutes. But the more attuned you are to it, it's almost instantaneous. And so my thought process is, if we can work with homeowners, work with business owners to invest in a land that surrounds their work and living environments, or their work and sort of home life environments, which tend to be stuffed with hustle and bustle and to-do
mhm,
lists,
mhm,
then what is initially difficult for the human unfolding to be able to tap into that kind of vibration and feel calmed by it, it'll feel hard at first, but eventually it becomes instantaneous. It becomes that you're not even thinking or trying. There's just a shift. You go from the hustle and bustle of getting the kids to umpteen appointments and buses and this and that, and then you drive home, and then whew,
mhm, mhm,
you can exhale, and it happens organically without trying to think about it. And so it's like you set the environment, and then the body will begin to attune to it. Does that make
mhm,
sense? Like over
mhm,
time, and it really isn't woo woo. It is based in science, um, and it takes practice to be able to feel that. A big part of what I do when I'm designing is I actually tell the clients I don't want to see the property until I've seen you.
mm,
Like I need to connect with you first, because yes, the land is important, but if you put me on any piece of land, I'm going to connect with it. It's much harder to connect to humans. So I have to do that work first so that I can try to discern what is it that would help you to tap in to those vibrations that'll help regulate you and help you with the best home environment. I mean, I imagine you do that with relocation. Like,
mhm,
where do people want to live? You have to get to know
mhm.
a little bit about the person. You can't
Yeah.
just throw any house at them.
They have to tap in. We do a holistic approach where you, they become really quiet and present and, tap into that which is calling them and listening to their intuition instead of the mind, blah, where should I go? Like getting really grounded and centered. And that's, a primary approach to relocation for us as well.
Yeah.
So, and you call it lifescaping, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, lifescaping. I love it. And, and so you consult with the person first. So if someone was to say, Monique, I'm really interested in lifescaping, your first thing would be to have a meeting with them outside of their environment, right? Or do you have, you could do a Zoom call, or is it an in-person thing? We're all
Yeah.
over.
We do. Well, I have a very, very tight system. So,
Mhm,
so I wrote a book that talks about Lifescape, like how the Lifescape method works, and there are three
mhm,
tenets. And I am. It's very important for me to operationalize things so that they make sense. And to build a business and to be successful building a business, you can't be all woo-woo when you're in your head. You actually have to create standard operating procedures and figure out ways that you can teach this to other people. So I employed 25 people
mhm,
to help me do this, everything from office staff, design staff, implementation staff. So they have to know, they have to understand what a lifescape is. They have to know that a landscape is something you look at and a lifescape is something you live in. And then they have to know the three tenets that we are looking at organization, we're looking at health, and then we're looking at wow factor or vitality, that like bling, pow, gorgeousness, all that stuff that's so yummy that we love as humans. But unfortunately, we love it so much, we lead with it. And you can't lead with that. You can't lead with pretty. It doesn't, I mean, it doesn't last. We've got to lead with organization and health. And so what I do is I have an initial intake call, and it's a phone call with the people where I'm really trying to understand how can they articulate their need, how do they articulate their want. That is a huge difficulty for people. Normally they're much better off articulating what they hate and they don't want. So you're trying to help them get from I don't want, I don't want, I don't want to, but what do you do? What do you want? And I think that's like what you're saying with your intake, is you're trying to draw out something that, intuition is something that a lot of people, they don't tap into, or they shove away when it comes. So that process is really to get that conversation started. And from a business sense, I've already done a ton of work digitally to vet people before they get to me. So before anybody gets on a phone call with me, they've already gotten access to so much information that they've selected me based on that intuition, that desire for something that they're seeing nowhere
mhm,
else. They're thinking
mhm,
maybe I can help them get it. So there's this uh back, is that the word I'm looking for? It's this element of the business creation that is developed in front of me, so that they have to filter through all of that. And the goal is, as they're going through all of this information, if I'm not for you, I want you to select yourself out,
mhm,
so that
mhm,
by the time you actually get that phone call with me, you're like, yeah, 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 okay, come over. And so it makes for fewer calls,
mhm,
but better calls and much more closes, from a business standpoint.
mhm,
Once we can get the larger pieces of what's required, like it's going to cost money to work with me, but we get that out of the way so that there's clarity, and now we can actually do the work.
mhm,
Now we can actually start to really dive into, what are we going to do for your land? And on the coaching side, it's really similar. It's, there are a bajillion coaches out there talking to people about how to make money.
mhm,
And while I'm very interested that you make money, I'm more interested in your soul alignment, that you're actually doing work that's aligning with your dharma, with your soul's purpose. And that's because I've struggled with that. It's like you're doing your dharma, you're doing your soul's work, and then all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're not anymore. Wait a minute, what happened? I thought that was my work, and now I'm dissatisfied. Why am I dissatisfied? What happened? We're not static. So how do we move? How do we follow that soul development that says, yeah, you're done with that. You got to leave that behind.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas as humans, we grab on, and I am
Mm-hmm.
such a grabber. Like I just hang on to it. And then I let go with one hand and think I'm so great, but I got a death grip with this one. So, that's what I'm practicing. And I think that really just carries through, whether you're working on your land or on your business or on your marriage or your friendships. Like you can take that same lifescape idea as a
Mm-hmm.
thread through all of it.
Mm. What a beautiful, all-encompassing program or concept. It's amazing because it's for your own life. It is lifescaping. You're lifescaping your whole life, and then your environment is a reflection of how you've been lifescaped inside. I think that's pretty amazing. And uh, so these people that are already coming to you, they're already seekers. They're already seeking something more. They're already seeking outside of the box. So pretty much whenever they start to look you up, they're already pretty much aligned with what you have to offer. So then they go through the extra screenings, and then when they come to you, okay, I'm ready, and you get everything out of the way so their money is taken care of, and then they can just open up to you, and
Yes.
and the process begins. What are some stories of transformation? Can you give me one or two of the people that
Yeah,
you
I
have worked with?
definitely can. I have so I had a client, and this has happened with men. A lot of times I am coming through uh the woman of the house, right?
Mhm.
So oftentimes that's where I'm coming through. And I have several stories where there's a longing, the woman has a longing for more cohesiveness and more vibration connection, even though that's not what they would call it, with their property. And I never even meet the husband. I don't meet the man in the house, right? Um and I work with all iterations of couples. This is just, kind of one transformation type of story that has repeated over decades. And I had this one in Newton, and I'd been working on this property since early in my career, and I may have been 16, 17 years in working with this client when they finally decided they were going to do some renovation. And I knew both parties, but I really was working very directly with the woman of the house. And we built this incredible environment, just really, really beautiful. It wasn't even that it was so fancy. It was just beautiful and wholesome, and it just drew you in. And she said to me one day, probably about 6 months after we had finished it, she emailed me and she said, I have to tell you a story. Normally, the way things work is we get to Friday and my husband can't pack his bags fast enough to go up to our lake house so that we're at our lake house all weekend. And then we wait until the last minute on Sunday to come back, or at the crack of dawn on Monday, he'll go to work, right to work, won't even come home. So I'm always like ready on Friday. She said, I was like, okay, I'm all packed. You ready to go? And his response was, no, you know what? I think we should have dinner here outside and then have breakfast and then mosey up there late Saturday morning. And it was like he felt at home, at home. He
Mhm.
wanted to be there. And when she typed to me, she said, I literally have tears in my eyes as I'm typing this. I have wanted to live in this home and love this home for decades. And we finally do, because he wants to stay.
Mhm.
And, I've had story after story about that, where the woman is really wanting to nest and love the home, even when kids are gone. And there's a misalignment. And when there's this alignment at the home, and it creates an alignment in the couple, and it creates an alignment, a sense of home, to me, that's like, wow, I did my job. It doesn't matter what I planted. It really
Mhm.
doesn't. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what colors are in the landscape. What matters is it's resonating with them.
Mhm.
Um, and for me, that's been huge. And in another story, one that's more on the business side, is what I find really interesting is that I will work with a business owner, and in very early on in our sessions, I will learn that there's somebody in their company that's undermining their power. and they actually can't operate in their full agency because somebody's chipping away, like almost like it's an active effort. It might not be, but there's some misalignment, some clashing. And I had one individual where this was happening, and that person had been with them over a decade. And it was almost like you could see the corrosiveness of that relationship. And we got about 6 or 7 sessions in, and I'm like, okay, as a coach, my job isn't to tell you what to do, but I'm going to break form here and tell you that you have to get away from that person. You have to get that person out of your company, because not only is that person undermining your agency as an owner, they're also making this sort of like this corrosive, toxic thing that's happening, and it's undermining the development of the rest of your staff. And I felt a little uncomfortable saying that, because it's, as a coach, you really don't tell people what to do. But I felt like that person wasn't getting it, and I needed to just kind of say it. They ended up letting them go. And the transformation of that business was almost like when you have a thorn in your hand and it's like pussy and gross and you don't want to pull it because it hurts, but it doesn't get better. And then you finally pull it, and all of a sudden it, like, within 3 days it's healed.
Wow.
It was just like that, Nancy. It just blew me
Wow.
away. And the people that were below this person, like, opened up and they thrived and they started being useful and helpful. And it just makes me realize that, like, as human beings, we need connection, we need conversation, we need safe places to talk about our lives where we don't feel like we're going to hurt somebody's feelings. Or and I know for me, working with coaches and working with professionals, like bringing an interior designer, that's not my shtick, right? I need help. And as a designer, I'm terrible because I think I can do it, but I really can't because it's inside. You bring somebody in and they just take all the burden away. And then so those two are huge for me, because I see the person that I'm working with directly, their life is vibrating at a much higher level and their nervous system is settled. And it's not for good. Things will keep changing, but that's really satisfying to be a part of.
It's amazing. It sounds like there was just like, I keep thinking of that eye of, what is that? That one that protects the Greek eye, like putting something in
Oh,
that
eye
in
of
the
Horus
environment.
or something.
I,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And I don't know if that's the word of it, but it just almost sounds like there's this dark
Angels.
energy. There was a dark energy in there. And that just shows that there's like how energy really, how we're all energetic beings and how we're affected by it all. And so, what was his response to that? Because literally, he saw his whole business change and people around him change.
Yeah, this owner was a woman,
Mhm.
and
Or her.
what I saw was almost like a blossoming.
Mm,
It's when you see in somebody's energy the shift between kind of like a depressed, sort of
mhm,
non-expansive, to opening and reaching.
mhm,
And a lot of times the owners that I'm working with, well, all of the owners I'm working with want, they're looking for regenerative practices. I mean, they're
mhm,
looking, the landscapers want organics, the nutritionists want, like real health vitality with not a lot of chemicals. I just worked with a yoga studio, and they're really looking about deep spiritual connections, so that there are already people who have access in their own bodies and to that desire, to that seeking, like you said.
mhm,
The problem is something's sitting on it. I mean,
mhm,
literally, like, sitting on it. So it opens up, and it's like they can't believe it, because when they look back, one of her things to me was, I can't believe what I put up with for so long.
mhm,
Like, I you know, it just, disbelief that they would stick in that for so long. And I've done it myself. I've done it myself in my business, where I've, like, held on to an employee for a really long time because I feel somehow obligated, and then realize the best thing I could do for myself, but also will end up being the best thing I can do for them,
mhm,
is to create a really good path for release. One of the
mhm,
things we do in the company is we try to normalize the conversation around separation, that not all jobs, not all connections are forever.
Mm-hmm.
That, you know, you have connections that are for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And
Mm-hmm.
you have to ask yourself, reevaluate all the time. You know, you get to wake up every day and choose to be an entrepreneur. You get to wake up every day and choose to stay married, to choose to stay in friendship with certain people. And if we don't remember that we can choose, we lose that sovereign connection to
Mm-hmm.
ourselves. But we all fall into the trap, me included. So I think it's just practice and being around people who are also behaving that way,
Mm-hmm. You
trying
said
to get
something
better.
really important right now because the world has been going through this in the last couple of years is choice. We all can choose. And we had something coming at us the last 3 years. We're like, oh, there's a one size fits all. This is for everybody, not really. All our bodies are different. We all respond differently. Here's a one size fits all. It was being pushed at it. And people that were wanting to choose were like demonized. And literally there was an attack going after them, like a propaganda attack. Like literally the people that survived that, like give them like gold stars. But we do have the freedom to choose. We don't have to be stuck in our life doing things that we don't enjoy, that don't resonate us. We are sovereign beings, and there's more coming at us. We need to know that we can choose to live these vibrant lives and not to have to follow the norm, because the norm is really keeping us down and keeping us burdened. So the freedom to choose, and a lot of people are choosing right now to grow their own food because a lot of things are happening to the food environment, our vegetables, our meat. They're trying to go to lab grown meat and all this other stuff. And so you do a lot of regenerative. And so as more people are looking to grow their own gardens, what do you suggest to them? Because there are a lot of people that are like, if they have a little plot of land, maybe they're growing a small garden. I know someone else that is raising their own goats and their chickens and every food, because then you have control over what you're going to be putting into your bodies and what kind of chemicals are going into your food. It's so important to have food that is free of all these pesticides and all these GMO'd and all these modifications. Our bodies aren't recognizing it as real food. So you do a lot, I'm sure, with people that are looking to grow their own gardens. Can you talk a little bit about that, about growing your
Yeah,
own
for sure.
gardens and your own food and how necessary? I mean, we have farmers markets. I'm spending a little more to go to the farmers market, but I know that they're really cultivating their own land and putting their love and care into it and not poisoning the food that I'm putting into my body to nourish myself.
Yeah. On my, I write two blogs, one on the Garden Continuum and one on
Mm-hmm.
the Lifescape Coach. And on the Garden Continuum, if you just search, there's a lot of stuff on growing food. And I catalog the development of my vegetable garden. Um, so I'm a real believer in CSAs, community, what is it? Community, gosh, I'm not going to remember what it stands for. But it's CSAs are farming associations where you can buy like a crop share
Mm-hmm.
and you can go and collect your crop share every week and you support the farm, and that's really, really great. And then like you said, farmers markets are awesome because not all people can grow all things. Like it might be super easy for you to grow tomatoes, but you can't grow corn and you can't grow squash because you don't have the space for it. um I personally really love raised box beds, partly because I have a lot of injury and kind of degradation in my spine. And so bending over a garden all the time can be a little hard. Plus, I have deer and rabbits and everybody who wants to
Mm-hmm.
ravage my garden, and I don't want to fence and electrify everything. So I have boxes that are 25 inches up, made of white cedar, and I have 8 of them. It's really a big kind of like a pottage or garden. It has a patio. I'm a firm believer in like living with your vegetables, like hanging out there, reading a book and popping some tomatoes in your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just really great. So we've encouraged a lot of our clients to do that. Just start with one box. One box becomes 2, maybe becomes 3 or 4 or 5, and they become more involved in it. Um, I think that like this year is I'm doing a big sweet potato crop because sweet potatoes have been hard to find. So I've been growing those. Um, and then sharing with people. So if you can't tend it all by yourself, maybe you have a garden because you've got the space, but you have 2 or 3 friends that do it with you. which can be a really nice way to be social. I have a colleague who doesn't have the space for bees, but her best friend has the bees, and they do them together, and they do the harvesting. And she always gives me a little jar of honey. It's just awesome. So I think that with all of the homesteading, the truth is to really homestead is a lot of work, and most people need to go to a job. So if you can, like, I would love to raise chickens. My husband raised chickens when he was a kid and sold eggs. But like I'm not home enough. I'm working, so it's not reasonable. But I have an employee who raises chickens, and and then we'll bring the eggs in and sell the eggs to everybody. So I think that community aspect of I'm growing the tomatoes, you're growing the zucchini, you're doing the potatoes, and sharing is phenomenal. And just trying it, because it is like literally in our DNA to grow food. And so a book that I love, have you ever read the book by Barbara Kingsolver, Animal Vegetable Miracle? It's a phenomenal book. Anybody who wants to grow food should read that book. She's a brilliant writer. And there's another book which is funny, so funny. It's called The $64 Tomato. And it's just, I can't remember the author's name, but super funny, but just about how, this passion project of growing your food, it's not making it cheaper. It's really about knowing you can, knowing that you can provide for yourself. That will shore up your feeling of self-worth, self-value, capability. It does, I think it does wonders. And I think having children do it is phenomenal, because they learn early on about where food comes from.
$64 tomato. I'm gonna have to get that. And the other
That
book,
one
I'll
is
put that in.
funny. I mean, he is so funny. It's a really funny book, and good. And then Barbara Kingsolver's is awesome.
A King Solver. Okay. I'm gonna look those up and put them in the show notes.
Yay.
More resources. What was I just gonna ask you? Hold on a second. I'm just trying I had a brain fog. There was something that I was going to ask you before that, but we'll cut this out because I just literally had a fart. Oh, community. I know.
Yeah.
So for community, you said another really important thing, because we've seen a lot of us getting away from community living, and a lot more people, because of the last couple of years, we're seeing how important community is. How many times we go outside, we don't know who our neighbor is around here, and a lot of people are joining communities or buying land around each other, where somebody will grow their chickens or raise their chickens. Another person's going to have their raw milk. Another person is, going to have the honey and the honeybees. And then there's kind of like a trade and barter system with a lot of it all, because if cash goes away, that's what you're going to do. That's what we did way back in the day as well. So, and then, supporting the local farmers market, it's become so hard for them to really, with all the regulations and stuff, to be able to grow their own food. So it's really important to support them also. Yeah, community, we're going back to community. So you work with a lot of that as well, correct? With the people that are growing their own food.
I mean, for me,
The
I
garden community.
understand, what you're talking about the past, several years being a real challenge, and pressing upon our ability to choose. I consider myself quite the edge dweller. I raised my children pretty much out of the medical system. That was very hard to do. And I worked really, really hard to see if I could, I mean, the same way that I'm trying to work with regenerative practices with the land. I mean, I birthed two humans at home.
Amazing.
And wanted to, my first one, I ended up at the hospital, much to the hospital's dismay, because I was not a good candidate. I was shoving everything away and just being like, help me through what I got to get through, and then I'm going home. And then my second child was born at home because I knew a whole lot more. So I think that I don't expect anybody to make the choices I made or make. What I want is the sovereign right to make all the choices that I want to make for myself. And I want to be trusted to do the intellectual and academic work that I need to weigh all my options. So that informed consent idea through the medical system is a lot of lip service. When I ask for information, I don't get it, or when I bring information, it's not listened to. So
Mm-hmm.
I think across the board, whether you're growing your own food, or or raising your children in a certain way, or making certain purchasing decisions or medical decisions, I think that the goal is, yes, find your community, and really work on acceptance. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's very hard to do, because if I want to be accepted, I also have to accept the dissenting view,
Mm-hmm.
right? I have to say that's okay too. And I think when it comes to things like, let's talk about raw milk, like for me,
Mm-hmm.
that was critical. It was the only milk my
Mm-hmm.
children were going to get. I needed my kids to pet the cows that the milk came from. That was important to me. And it's very easy to get vilified for that choice, but you have to be able to stand strong enough and find your community that's
Mm-hmm.
going to help you not erode away from that choice because of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think our job as human beings, no matter what we're doing, is to find and cultivate our community, because if you don't cultivate a community, it doesn't stay. I mean, you have to put in the work. And then we tend and cultivate our land, and then we pay attention and open to awareness in our work lives. And the goal ultimately being that you are lifescaping, right? You're continually, oh, I can't say that, continuously looking at what is the organization and structure in my life that I can depend on and work to shore up as I need to. What is the health? What is the picture of health in all of the segments of my life, and what needs attention? And then how do I have a little bit of pop, a little bit of wow, a little bit of fun, a little bit of inspiration that keeps me going?
Mm-hmm.
And I think walking away from that saying it's going to go up and down. It's not like a destination that you're going to get to and stay at. It's the work you're doing day in and day out to
Mm-hmm.
make those choices. And if you're doing that in a community of people that are doing that, oof, it's way
Mm-hmm.
easier. It's way easier.
Mm-hmm. Because we're always evolving, nothing's static. I have a friend that moved to India, and she was over there throughout the whole pandemic. She was yoga. She met her partner out there, and then she decided to move out there. She's going to have her baby and raise her baby out there. But it's a whole, it's a community. There's at least 30 people like that are in it, and they just really have this beautiful community where they contribute so much to each other and they support each other. It's such a beautiful thing to see. So yeah, that's such a and you talked about sovereignty. It's so important to be sovereign in your decisions, because there's all this propaganda, like say the raw milk, where it's not true about what they're demonizing it. And then our milk has been so whitewashed, and raw milk is, just like milk does the body good because it had so many, valuable has so many properties and healing properties in it. But how is the medical industry going to make money if you're being healthy from this milk? And that's a whole other like ball of wax to talk about, which we won't get into today. But
Well, what I can
mhm,
tell you, I'm going to interrupt for 1 second. What I
sure.
can tell you is the groups that I joined in order to get the support, like I wasn't going to get the support from my neighbors, because the chances of me, I mean, I live in a kind of a suburby area. I don't live in a farm
Mm-hmm,
area. Um, but like I ended up joining the Weston A. Price Foundation, and I was able, by joining that foundation, I was able to learn about nutrient dense food. I was
mm-hmm,
able to attend conferences where I had access to people who were in community, raw milk communities. So I think when we want to do these things, we have to look for the community. So we're
the
just using
support.
raw milk as an idea, but
Mm-hmm,
it's those communities that we seek out that will help nurture the seeking in us. And that's what I'm doing with a yoga community that I belong to, like your friend, where it's a group of seekers who are really trying to connect back into their essence nature, connect into their awareness and intuition, you know, and then we go to our day job, you know, and we're better in our day job, and we're easier to be around when we're doing that other work. We're easier to be around when we feel sovereign because we have a community behind us that we know we can turn to and ask a significant question, rather than asking that question like out into the ethers where, yeah, you may not get a lot of support. So I feel like that's part of that work that we do to make sure we're surrounded by the kinds of people that really support us. And that's been really critical for me in my business growth, is that I was seeking out business coaches that had more of an expansive thinking, so that they would see me as a whole being and not just a business owner.
Mm-hmm.
And that helped a lot.
Wow. That's really incredible. I love this. I love everything that you're doing, everything that we're talking about. I know we've got to wrap this up soon,
Yeah.
but I did want to go back a little bit to just about the lifescaping, the home and the environment around your home. So what does somebody that lives, say, in an apartment or a condo, I mean, I know a lot of communities, they have beautiful landscaping. Mine has beautiful landscaping. It's backed against, like, I have forest and trees and paths behind me. But what if somebody maybe lives in a condo in a busier area? How would they lifescape, or how would you help them in their living environment? Maybe all they have is what's inside their home.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great question. So I used to live in an urban environment. Luckily, I had a little deck, and I did a lot of growing. I literally put window boxes on the railings, and you know, and then pots, and so a little balcony, a little deck. Like, there's so much potential, and you really do not need a lot to be able to be connected to plants. My office environment, we have plants throughout the office environment. I mean, what you see here and
Mm-hmm.
here are not real, because I don't have the time to take care of real in
Mm-hmm.
here. But in my downstairs, where the main office is, there are plants all through it. And part of my office administrator's job is to love and manage those plants. And the plants literally are, you know, they're shade tolerant. We have them stuck in the ceiling, so they, you know, we have vines going through the ceiling. So
Mm-hmm.
you can have plants inside. They make these awesome terrariums and growing environments, and racked growing with grow lights. Like, so I think that, you know, you don't have to go full bore. It could be that you're getting one low light plant, learn about it, learn how to take care of it, and then tend it like it's a cat or a dog. You know, think about it as a sentient being, as opposed to as a static thing in the corner that I'm going to neglect and never water. The minute we shift our mind to loving a thing like it's a living thing, like it has feelings, and like it has all of that, it will bring out in you another layer of connectivity to your nervous system. So it could just be one plant,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
as simple as one plant. And oftentimes what I see is the one plant turns into two, and next thing it's five, and
Mm-hmm.
people then have plants all over their apartment, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so it's possible. It's possible to do it in home.
Mm-hmm. So you start small with one, and it could go to more, and tend to it like you would a cat or a dog or a pet. It's true, because I'll talk to my plant. Hey, little baby. I've had one plant. She's come with me, or she. Like at least 20 years I've had her, and
Yeah,
and she's just like, oh, she's moved a couple times, and she's just so beautiful. And then I talk to them, and it's been shown, literally time lapse, and there's been studies about when you talk to your plant, say, I love you, and you're so beautiful, look at how pretty you are, it responds to that.
absolutely. And if you
Yeah.
think about like brushing a dog or
Mm-hmm.
brushing a cat,
Mm-hmm.
if you have, you know, let's say you have a monstera or something, you know, they have these big leaves, so they collect dust.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a warm, like a very like lukewarm cloth, and you're just going through and just wiping down every leaf. Can you imagine like the
Mm-hmm.
feeling? So
Mm-hmm.
so so we have amazing capacity to nurture. And when we offer nurturing, when we are in service, we actually are in a really good place to align our nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
When it's me, and you're trying like, why don't I have, and why don't I have? Your nervous system is regulated in a
Mm-hmm.
negative way. But if I'm in service and I'm actively
Giving.
loving,
Mm-hmm.
it's regulated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And after this conversation, today's my plant day. Today's when I water them. Yeah. And I have a mister that I spray. But yeah, today, I mean, I do throughout the week, but today's the big water day. So I'm going to really take
Good.
loving care to them. So,
Tell them I
so
said hi.
I will say hi. Monique says hi. Hi, Monique. They're like, yeah, I know her. We're connected. And I have seen also where you see the I don't know if it's under ultraviolet light, but literally you see that even a leaf that falls out, you see the electric magnetic, like an aura around your plant.
Yep.
They're literally living and alive. And we disregard plants so much. Like when I go on my walks, I don't even put headphones on. I just listen to the insects and bird and like look at all the beautiful leaves. And I try to, take that in and I absorb their energy and I give my energy to them. So it's very healing
Yeah. Forest
to that as
bathing.
well. Yeah, it's
I
awesome.
mean,
And I
it's
did
a
a lot of it
thing.
in Oregon. That's what saved me during I call it doing time in Oregon. Doing time in Portland. That's what saved me is my walks. So yeah, and breathing in that beautiful biome. So anyway,
Yeah.
well, it's been so lovely having you on, and I would love for people to find you and work with you and begin their own lifescaping. So can you tell our audience how is best to work with you and where to find? I know you have some books, and I know you have some free. I believe you have some free downloads or some
Yeah,
guides.
lots of
Yeah,
free stuff.
yeah,
Yeah. So, and I'm sure you'll put it in the show
I
notes,
will.
but my flagship company is thegardencontinuum.com. And if you're a gardener, there's a great blog on there, lots of awesome free stuff. And free ebooks and just really good things. Learn about regenerative landscaping and what fine gardening is and how to design. You can go to my lifescapecoach.com. I have a store there. You can pick up the book, Stop Landscaping, Start Lifescaping. And my happy place is Instagram at monique.com.
Mm,
No, what is it? At monique.allen, I think, is the Instagram. So
I'm gonna
yeah.
have to. I think I have you on my Instagram. I'm gonna make sure to put you on
Yeah,
my
we'll make
Instagram.
sure we're connected.
Okay, well, wonderful. Everybody, you need to find Monique. And I know a lot of real estate. I used to work in the real estate industry, and especially in California, multi-million dollar homes like it with estates. And then even where I live now in Rochester, such beautiful homes. I can think of so many people that could use this and wouldn't mind, connecting with you and really lifescaping their own environment. So I'm going to make sure to get the word out. So one more question before you leave. I always ask all my audience, you might know what this is if you've listened to my podcast. What does it mean for you to live with an awakened heart?
What it means for me is loving myself, loving the incarnation of me enough to do the work, to walk through sort of the harder, stickier things, knowing that I'm an evolution. I am an
Mm,
evolution. And the only way that I can tap into that is to have an awakened heart. Because when
mm,
it's hard and it hurts, we tend to want to close our heart down. So thinking a little less and learning to feel, that's really been my focus in these past, I would say maybe 5 years.
mm,
It really, really has been feel into it, just feel into it. And you got to have an awakened heart for that. And it just
mhm,
means everything to me because I think when your heart is awake, it's like having better taste buds. It's like you taste everything a little bit better
mm.
if you're going at it with an awakened heart.
Beautiful. And as you're saying that, I had another spin that I'd like to ask you.
Mm.
What does it mean for somebody to live an awakened heart in regards to their land?
I think it's about resonance. I think
Hmm.
it's about deep, deep reverence. It's about walking with the land in a reverent way,
Mm,
understanding that nature, ecology, it's grand. It was way before us and it will be way after us. And we are just a little teeny blip.
mm,
And when we can be awakened, when we can be with an awakened heart with nature,
mm,
it's like it's like literally charging, just charging. And that requires reverence.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're reverent, you would never do some of the things that you see done to land.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't. You couldn't. So I think when your heart is awakened to nature, it's a gift to nature, but it's a gift to you.
Mm-hmm. It's a reverence and a sacredness, and it's beautiful. I felt that really hit home. I felt that in my heart. And then the awakenedness.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. Honoring and respecting and working symbiotically with, the land. It's beautiful. Well, Monique, thank you so much for coming on the Awaken Heart podcast. It was so
Thank
wonderful.
you.
I love
Yeah,
this
this was great.
conversation. Okay. Have
Thank
a
you.
wonderful rest of your day.
You
Oops.
too.
Thanks.